Hey guys, welcome back to the show. Just a few things before we get started tonight. I want to remind everybody about a one-day event that's coming up at the end of this month in Folsom, California, right there in Sacramento, California. Mary Beaver, former U.S. Army Sergeant Mary Beaver, is actually going to be hosting her own one-day event, and she's basically it's 6 hours of disclosure. She's going to be blowing the whistle on a lot of the stuff she was involved in, and she has documents of that she was given permission to basically release to the public. And I've seen some of these documents personally whenever she came to my house to film for our documentary that's coming up, and there are boxes and boxes of classified documents, including a list of 200 extraterrestrial species that we've been involved with that she's going to be telling us about, including showing, I don't know if actual photos, but at least art, artist depictions of them, where they're from. She has an entire list of all the spaceports on the planet, even including Stargates and where they go, the underground base network. There's looking glass probabilities that she has been shown for our future. So it's going to be really interesting. I'll share my screen really quick and just show you guys that flyer. So if anyone's interested, the website is Adana of Soul.us, ADONNAOFSOL.us. That link is below in our description. But I'm also just going to share the screen real quick so you guys can see that. Um, so there it is. So the early bird live stream actually just ended. So the live stream passes are now $25, I believe, but the in-person passes are $50, one day only, 6 hours. I'm going to be hosting it. Basically, I'm just going to be getting up there and introducing her and talking to people during the breaks and stuff. So I just bought my plane tickets. I'm really excited. So I hope to see you guys out there. And as you know, we have our event coming up in May 12th through the 15th in Grafton, Illinois, Rebels of Disclosure. It is our fourth annual conference and it is our last year in Grafton. So if you haven't been yet and you want to come to Grafton, grab a ticket, come hang out. We have 4 day passes, 1 day passes, or live stream if you can't make it. It's a lot of fun. It's more like a vacation conference. It's not like a seminar in a hotel. It's a beautiful lodge. There's hiking, camping. It's right by the river. There's amazing views. We go to Cahokia Mountains the following day on a little field trip. If you've never been there, it's an incredible ancient pyramid site, essentially. So, uh, journeytotruth.online. If you go to our website, you can find everything that you need to know there. And hang on, let me just check the chat really quick. Yeah, okay, we're good. Um, why is that not? Oh, there it is. Okay. So anyway, with that out of the way, um, all that information is below in the description, by the way. But with that out of the way, let's welcome tonight's guest, Indigo Angel or Indy. She is somebody I have been following on Typical Skeptic podcast. She's a frequent guest on there, and I really liked what I was hearing. I recently did a roundtable with her, discussing a bunch of what did we even talk about at that time? Elon Musk and Trump
Hmm.
and just kind of who they are and their archetypes and this, in the bigger picture of what's actually going on. And it was a really fascinating discussion. And tonight we're going to get into the New Earth prophecy and like the forced breeder programs and kind of our galactic history. She's done extensive research on this and along with her own, intuitive hits and insights. So it seems like there's a lot to get through, according to her. So, welcome to the show. And I want to also give you a chance to briefly introduce yourself to our audience who might not know who you are.
Well, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to come onto your channel, Journey to Truth. I really like the name. I think it's very telling, the depth that you guys like to go and just the cosmic planetary ascension awakening that we're all experiencing. So I think you guys are doing amazing work, and I'm so excited that you invited me to come and speak on your channel. Um, I essentially have been on YouTube myself for, I think, maybe 7 years now, and I had an awakening, I think, in 2013, just like a lot of people who are and the higher consciousness community have. And essentially, it's just really opened me up and expanded my mind. And um, I've developed a strong connection and channel with the Guardian Alliance and their messages and what they have for humanity. And essentially, I have, tied that into my own experiences in this incarnation. And it's really led me to look deeper into exposing the atrocities of the forced breeder program because this is something that I think impacts the entire world, both men and women. But, of course, women, I think, have taken a hit through the forest breeder programs that a lot of people aren't aware about. And it's something that's really bleeding into our modern day timeline. So I work really due diligently to expose the corruption around these things. And I also teach about the coming of the new earth and what things will look like in the future to help tie things into the bigger perspective of what we're becoming essentially through all the spiritual work that we do and through the grid work that we do and through the truth movements that we have. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
that's beautiful. Yeah. And I'm going to read straight up what you texted me about the forced breeding programs, and we can just kick the conversation off with that. So you said forced breeding programs, people have to understand the guardian history and when it began, the events that took place throughout history, and how this applies to modern day forced breeding. And you have slides and stuff like that if you wanted. But so it's really interesting. So if somebody who doesn't know what's going on, which pretty much our audience does, but maybe you can explain kind of in a nutshell what these breeder programs are and how long they've been going on, and we can just go from there.
Yeah, sure. So I pretty much define them again through my own personal experience. I feel like I was a victim of forced breeder programs, not only in past lives, but in this current incarnation. And so it led me on a journey of decoding what those energetic blockages were within myself. And it led me to design a feminine implant system. Basically, created a nice little diagram and what all these blockages look like. Created session work around it so that way it can help other women heal from this and men as well, because men also carry a set of sexual misery implants and a set of force breeder implants that applies to their body. So it is actually energetic inferiority that's inside of our body that affects our tonal lines, our chakras, our organs, and our consciousness overall, essentially. But I think this really came in through the Draco Hive, and it's really where we have to look at what's going on with the women of the world because this really does truly expose where the evil lies on the planet. And that can also be defined according to the Stargate locations as well. But essentially, it's really where we're under a misogynistic rule, and the forced breeder programs do manifest through physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, sexual, reproductive enslavement of women and subjugating them according to that. Systemically through gender-based violence. And we do see it currently at the forefront of the world, especially what's going on with all of the World War III timelines. We see the sexual violence and the armed conflicts. A lot of the hostages that were taken that were women were, brutally raped and things like this. So it's enforcement of sexual abuse on hostages, rape, sexual slavery and auction markets for female sex slaves. It's forced prostitution, forced pregnancy, forced abortions, forced sterilization. It's really everything that's going on around birthing on the planet, which is something that the guardians on the earth right now are trying to heal and correct within the Stargates, essentially. Um, but so much more. I mean, it ties into the sex trafficking, the sex slavery, the child marriages that are currently going on, the pedophilia, all of it. And so, yeah, it is a very extensive history on the planet. So this does really go back to the fall of Mu. This is kind of like the origins of the f female suppression, and it was male suppression as well. So it started in Mu. Um, and what I've come to believe with reading a lot of Charles C.'s Churchward's work is that um, the female creation origins or records were in the Nakal tablets, essentially, and that this was taken to India when the motherlands of Mu essentially sunk in the Pacific. And so those tablets were taken to India. They were later lost, they were stolen. I mean, no one really knows, but I really have a hunch, according to certain guardian systems I communicate with, that this was kind of the beginning of the downfall of things. This then bled into the Lemurian Holocaust, which I'm sure you're probably familiar with and your viewers are familiar with. That was approximately 200,000 years ago, 70,000 years ago. You know, can't really say for sure on those timelines. No way of confirming that, but that really led to the dismantling of the Lemurian and the Atlantean grids and some showdowns that happened essentially, according to Guardian records, that occurred in Kauai in the Hawaiian Islands when we had the Ioni massacres. And you can look this stuff up if you study the Voyagers' work or Ashana Dean or Lisa Renee.
Hmm.
But essentially, they talk about how the Draco invasions occurred there and why this is actually a forced breeder program, and how we need to look at it is that the tribes that were there were 12th dimensional soul blueprint holders. So this means that they were aligned on a 12D level in the procreation process. That means they were bringing souls into the planet that held the 12D soul blueprint. So they would bring more souls in that were more harmonious with the earth. They could transmit through light and sound healing codes. They had the accessibility to be basically cleansing the evil out of the earth and basically taking care of the spirit of the earth. And ever since those invasions occurred, in those original tribal raids on Lemuria, it essentially fractured that 12-dimensional ability to procreate between men and women. And it really actually created a trifurcation wound that occurred between men and women and, implanted betrayal wounds essentially in that timeline. So this further dismantled, further deteriorated everything. Um, and when I say forced, the women were essentially, ripped out of the tribes. They were essentially chained to the moon. And I really think this has to do with the reproductive cycles, and this has to do with Toth. Toth was involved in this story as well. And they were forced to breed Anunnaki reptilians. Okay. And the men were then taken and castrated. And we talk about castration and we look at where that's going on today. I mean, this really comes back to circumcision. So this is actually a forced breeder wound for the masculine. But, this was kind of when this was more of the downfall. And there was a lot of implantation of the original sin in the woman's body. And so, that is a whole diabolical thing that occurred. But it continued to go on. Um,
Well,
the fall of Sophia, all of these things. Yeah.
yeah, so there's tons there to unpack, and I agree with all that. It's very interesting. I mean, you have an extensive history there that you kind of blew through.
Yeah.
So,
There's
but
so much more.
no, I understand, but it's important to understand because, like you said, it's coming full circle, and we're still seeing it. We're seeing the byproduct of all of that. And obviously, I think, we're heading into this new Earth. So anyone who's tuning in and they see the title New Earth Prophecy, everything is connected. The whole purpose of this is, there is a dark side and a light side to this. And like we can't move forward until we understand the dark and transmute it, right? And it's coming to the surface to be purged. And that's why we have to discuss it because you can't really move forward unless you truly know where you've been, until we know our true origins and what actually happened, how we got into this mess. So I promise we will shift the conversation into a much lighter atmosphere towards the end, but I think it's important to understand for our audience and the collective that message will ultimately get out to that this is a major, major issue here on the planet, and it gets into. I mean, now it's an attack on the alpha male, and they're trying to, get us out of the way so they can. I mean, that's a whole other conversation. We won't go there, but we can eventually. Aaron, did you want to bring anything to the conversation before we move on?
No, this is all fascinating and sounds pretty spot on to me. So yeah, thank you.
Well, and just to tie in, and well said, and thank you so much. But just to tie into New Earth, it's absolutely imperative that we get to the bottom of this. It's imperative that we expose it and that we work
Mhm.
to shift and change things on the 1D Earth, the 2D Earth, the 3D Earth, the 4D Earth timelines, because this is where all the suffering is occurring when it comes to these things. And really, the feminine has to be liberated in order to step into her power. I mean, in the prophecy of New Earth, that we're going to talk about, it's really about divine feminine and divine masculine Christed consciousness stepping into enlightenment. Women and the femininity can't step into enlightenment unless collectively on a global level we can release the force breeder curse essentially because women have to be able to channel enlightenment messages and also bring forth the truth of revolution and revelations equally. And this is the missing counterpart to, why everything is so inverted and ultimately imbalanced. Um, it will be necessary for New Earth to evolve that we become more telepathic and we become more telekinetic and we learn how to manifest and co-create in collective thought. We cannot do that as a collective, a soul collective, unless the feminine is ultimately liberated from these types of things. So it applies to the lower dimensional earth realms, but on the higher dimensional earth realms where new earth is actually existing, present and future and past, and where it's integrating to where we can see things now, um, these things are free, essentially. But as you go down in density, you see how, things are still very wound up and binded. So.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I mean, I forgot what I was just gonna say. Go ahead, keep going.
Well, breaking down the history, so moving
Oh, that
from,
I
oh,
remember. Yeah,
okay.
sorry. So you're talking about these dimensional Earths, right? And so it's important to understand, like there is a different, like Earth takes on a different form in each dimension. And it's kind of hard to explain to somebody who's new to this, but it's all frequency. And I think right now, like depending on, you can literally slip between these timelines daily, depending on the choices that you make. And you can make one wrong decision in the morning and like you can exist on a lower frequency timeline throughout that day or and get stuck there if you're not careful because you kind of get caught in that airwave of like the collective at the time and the consensus reality. So it's like a really fine line to walk and it's an interesting dance that we have to play. But I think ultimately like when we bring in this information, we're kind of ushering in the new earth, but essentially we're just merging with that reality. And I think that like the recent way that I've had manifestation explained to me was what all you're doing when you're manifesting is actually trying to pull something from another dimension that already exists. So you're not actually like you can manifest, and there's a million different ways to describe it, but if you imagine there's a version of yourself on a higher timeline in 5D or New Earth that already has everything that you want, like you can just pull from that timeline or merge with that timeline. It's already there. It's not like you actually have to create it. You just have to remember how to reconnect with it. And sorry, you can go ahead.
Yeah, basically I mean, you said that really good. I call it timeline jumping. We can move between the lower earth and the higher earth and we can navigate the space-time dimensions in the present moment. But um, those higher timelines would be kind of foreign to someone that hasn't awakened, their DNA strands, four through six strands because these allow you access to the lower and the higher astral realms. So you do have to get your ascension codes up in the body. And really to, walk on New Earth, to walk on 12D Earth, you do have to activate your 12th dimensional soul body blueprint. And so it's you do have to at least have merged with those time fields to have recognition of the experience. But how I kind of see that's happening is through your heart chakra. So your heart chakra is essentially it's a 16-dimensional Stargate portal because there's four chambers of the heart and each one is fourth dimensional. So I mean, really, your heart has the ability to take you all the way to 16D Earth and even beyond. But so it is about accessing that inner vortice and getting the vibration, the frequency up in the body so that way you can make those jumps and shifts. And and it is hard to go from maybe a 1D, 2D, or 3D Earth right into like a 8D, 9D, 12D Earth because that can actually take time because the density that manifests in the body. Let's say I was on a 1D Earth, it could take me a good 6 weeks, even a couple months to get up to a 12D Earth. And also to say that there is something happening that we have to recognize that a lot of the land on the mainland, at least here in the United States, isn't supporting a 12th dimensional template. So a lot of the stargates, the inner earth passageways, they're actually blocked. So there's a lot of places that aren't even able to maintain barely a 1D earth. So, indigo star season, those that are very sensitive to energy, they're going to struggle deeply trying to get to that experience, especially if it's not being sustained by the land. So that's, why we say getting to nature is so important. Um, but also moving on the grid, taking those vacations or grid worker missions or, going to do the healing work and things like this in places that actually do support a higher soul body blueprint because, where you are, you're probably bogged down with frequency fences, artificial beast machinery, weaponry, all kinds of crap that they're running the cocaine skies, whatever it is, that's suppressing our light body and it's much more difficult to quantum jump those timelines. That's what
Yeah.
I've seen. Yeah.
What did you call them? The cocaine skies?
Yeah.
Something like
The
that.
I'm
lines?
in
Yeah.
Florida. I'm in Florida. It's really bad down here. Really bad.
Today they were killing us with chemtrails. I mean, the skies were just, I mean, it's already coated. I mean, it was a beautiful, clear morning and they came in and did their thing. I can't wait to get past that. But yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that the land itself, like the portals are being cut off, the inner Earth stargates or whatever, because it is our understanding. Like if you go to Mount Shasta, there
Mhm.
might be a physical entrance somewhere, but there is an entrance, like a dimensional doorway, right, that can grant you access to the underworld if you, I mean, the inner Earth, but you can't necessarily see it if you're not in that frequency, right? It actually
Yeah.
you won't even be able to perceive it. So I think the frequency nets that you're talking about, that makes a lot of sense. It's mind control, enslavement, all that, but it also makes those doorways inaccessible for us. Because we literally don't perceive them. And then there's people that doing the grid work that understand they're there, but I think that you're absolutely right. Part of that frequency net is to keep them hidden or closed.
Yeah. Well, in terms of New Earth prophecy as well, there's also an abundance of holographic anatomy that exists in the United States. We are kind of the New Earth prophecy holders according to the Dove Light and the Dove Grid, which activates a network of, etheric energy centers called they're like 12 different locations of central suns that exist in the land. But all of this energetically is powered ultimately from the stargates. The stargates are our spiritual immunity and it is our lifeline. And you're absolutely right with Mount Shasta. Um, I mean, between Mount Shasta and the Stargate in Sarasota, Florida, Stargate 2, I mean, this is really kind of what powers the grid in the United States. Um, and and unfortunately, Stargate 3, which is the Bermuda Triangle, I mean, is functioning as a wormhole system along the 70-degree west, east side of North America, and is really kind of ripping the third dimensional parallel timelines into those black hole systems, not even to mention that there are, Atlantean priests that already uploaded themselves to the AI cloud from, Atlantis and essentially are funneling nanotech over into Mount Shasta. And I think it's one of the reasons why the whole infrastructure of California is under such extreme warfare when we look at what's happening to the ecological systems from the fires to the water systems to, the death of the fish, whatever you want to call it. Everything is slowly, dismantling over there. That is a sign that that Stargate at Mount Shasta is struggling.
Interesting. I mean, I would say, yeah, there's so many directions to go with that. But the land, I mean, we have also the plane crashes and all that stuff happening, which I think could also be the byproduct of a war taking place in our skies that we don't even know exist. Like, what if that thing that crashed in Philadelphia was debris
Yeah.
from the battlefield in the sky. I mean, who knows? But we have to start thinking outside of the box like that. So I think there's things happening in other dimensions and maybe even in this dimension that we just can't perceive because of the illusion, right? But I think it's necessary to understand that there are other layers to this war in other dimensions simultaneously. And when we do something in the physical, then it impacts those other dimensions. And I think that's like it's all part of it, and it's all connected in ways that we don't understand. So when people are like, I don't really see anything happening, I think, it takes time to ripple into those other dimensions.
Yeah, and the dark ones know that these are our lifeline. I would say that, Mount Shasta is the planetary root chakra. So they can consciously, sentient AI can tap into that planetary collective psyche and really know, all of the root fears of humanity from that point. And, they can implement that grid war. You see Mount Shasta, it's holding the infrastructure of California, I would say the entire west side of the United States, over to the Hawaiian Islands, over to Alaska, and also where it goes to other portal locations in other parts of the grid, such as India, which is really holding powerful root chakra energy. I mean, it's one of the only places in the world where we literally have yoni temples, 51 yoni temples, Shiva lingams, and things like this. They literally are pouring water on, the genitalia of the masculine over there, So, and what do we see over there? Forced breeder programs, Islamic communism, women, their temples are being desecrated. So everywhere that root chakra is transmitting on the grid, and you see that it's not being sustained, on the other side, you can see those connections and pathways and portals are essentially they're being blocked. So,
Mhm.
yeah, the health of Mount Shasta is actually imperative for the United States. I was just saying the other day, we're kind of in a battle right now with the organic stargates versus the AI stargates. And they're going to be launching, the AI Stargate project down in Abilene, Texas. I think we really need to look at what's happening to the organic consciousness and be protecting these things. I mean, because the power that it's going to take to generate all these things, it's really going to take a hit, and the Stargates are already taking a hit right now, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's really interesting. And talking about the Stargates, there's also the physical Stargates, which is basically a portal that has, they've built a structure around it to isolate it, like we see in SG-1, right? And there's these Stargates that they've built in underground bases, and the bases are strategically located based on the ley line intersections and accessing
Hmm.
these portals. So something that Mary Beaver actually was told whenever she was being briefed at the Pentagon. One of the reasons that they intentionally keep everyone infested with parasites is because if you have parasites in you, you can't pass through one of these stargates in the underground base. Because essentially what happens to the parasites is the frequency or whatever the molecular dissociation that occurs within the passing through the wormhole. These parasites essentially spontaneously combust, so it would actually kill you if you access the Stargate. So what it is it's like a security system to make sure that no one escapes the planet, including their own people. And so she was like, unless like you can't get all the parasites out, like there will always be some, just like good bacteria and bad bacteria. But if somebody's infested, which all of the politicians, like all their puppets, are infested because it's the parasitic thought forms that even control them. So if they ever wanted to try and escape and stop taking orders from, their satanic overlords, they couldn't do it because it would kill them. And then it's like a trap for them. And obviously, as a byproduct, the whole world is now infested with parasites. That's why the parasite cleanse is coming to the forefront. And it's important. It's crucial, I think, to everyone should, start looking into a parasite cleanse. Um,
Sorry, I
Yeah.
think my puppy was barking in the background. I didn't know if you heard
oh,
it,
I
but
didn't hear it. No.
No,
okay.
no.
He's a talker. Um, Well, yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I went to Kauai, Hawaii, and it's definitely a 144 dimensional Stargate there. And I literally seen how people couldn't even access that gate system. They weren't even allowed to go. I also think there is an organic intelligence that can pick and choose who can and can't access certain gate systems type of thing. Your heart does have to be pure, your consciousness, your vibration, your frequency. Um, but ultimately, they are there to heal us. I mean, these are the incarnation gates on the planet. This is the access for interdimensional space-time travel. This is how, seed races are coming into the planet, and this is how they're going off the planet. At the end of the day, everybody will be accessing a Stargate. We go through the earth before we go wherever we go. It's not like, we go that way first. We go back into the spirit of the earth because this is really where everything kind of came from. And so,
Yeah, it's like the way
that's,
out is inward. Yeah, I mean,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and so the quality of the health of the stargaze, it's just imperative. I mean, it governs so much of the reality dynamic for human beings on the planet. Um, And yeah, I would say that the one that is connected to the forest breeder programs, I mean, all of them are tied in different timelines and different things, but the one that is running in Abadan, Iran, the 10th Stargate, this is kind of like really the Draco hive, the Draco nest. It's really close to Mount Hermon, essentially. That is kind of where the whole Nephilim came and descended down onto Mount Hermon, and then they took human women and force bred them to basically birth their babies, Nephilim babies. So that's kind of, ties it back into that history. But, I think it all did continue to affect the timelines as it continued to ripple out. You may have heard about the Mary Magdalene laundries.
Aaron,
Nope.
bring it on. Enlighten us.
Okay, yeah. Well, this was where a lot of the Irish women, most of the Irish women were subjugated to the sex slavery, and it's really like where a lot of women were, you know, the ones that weren't able to wed, or they were widows, or they had a child out of wedlock, whatever it was, they sent them to these Mary Magdalene laundries, and then they ended up becoming like sex trafficking slavery houses. They would dispose of the babies, close to one of the Mary Magdalene laundry facilities. They actually found like 800 babies in a septic tank. There's just all kinds of, they just diabolical things, right? That would happen. It was for the so-called fallen women. But it wasn't just the Irish women, it was also the African women as well. As we know, a lot of them were taken for the Atlantic slave trade and all of this. And so they were subjugated to basically being raped and studded out to produce more slaves. And that's really kind of what the Irish women were also taken for too, was to create mulatto slaves, more light, fair-skinned slaves and things like this because they were worth more money. So this is why they would take the Irish women for these things.
So,
So, yeah.
what what inspired you to even go down this rabbit hole? Like, did you start having memories that you couldn't explain, so you looked into these breeding programs? Like, how did you come into this information?
Well, I think it started with my own experience. Maybe not trying to go too much into it, but I definitely feel that I was a part of a forced breeder program in this life. Um, Not to say like I love my children, but I think we definitely have suffered some major hybridization traumas. Um, and I want to say that, um, who I had children with, that they have a very high reptilian genetic and gene code, so there's a lot of aggressiveness. My pregnancy was constantly under attack. My motherhood was constantly under attack. I was constantly wrapped up in the, child courts and things like this, I mean, for years. And it's just, the experience was very, very difficult. And it was very traumatic, I'll be honest with you, and I really think that my own children struggle with a lot of things that, children would struggle with coming into um or being born through a union that wasn't of the highest like creation intent, right? So there's a lot of things that you witness. I think that when a child is hybridized with strong reptilian gene code, that their indigo spirit or their indigo soul or their indigo light body is fighting to come forward because the reptilian part of them is literally trying to consume that light body and keep it at bay. Not only that, you're under immense amount of attack and warfare. I mean, because reptilians want to reptilianize their children, and how they do that is mental warfare, psychic warfare. Um, you know, it's literally like psychopathic experiences. It's just it's nuts. And and it's that kind of is what opened me up to all of this is the recognition of needing to heal. Um, and then finding that other people have written about this, like I said, Asha Nadine, Lisa Renee, David Icke has written about this. So I started finding that this is something that other people are talking about. I started doing my own research. I started looking deeper into it. And it's really taken me to all over the world looking at certain situations and scenarios that this is really going on at a much deeper level. Like what I experienced is nothing to what the women who are experiencing this under the worst conditions are going through right now at this time. I mean, if you look over at Abadan, Iran at Stargate 10, I mean, it is pretty horrific. The genocide, the burning of the women. I mean, the forced conversions to religion and Islam and things like this. You may have heard of the Yazidi genocide and the Sinjar massacre. They basically took like 10,000 Yazidi women, forced them in Iraq and Iran to convert to Islam. They took all of the women, they raped them, they um, murdered a lot of them, the ones that would refuse into the forced marriages. They basically burned them alive in cages. Some of them, they would take their babies and cook them and literally frickin' serve them to the mothers. I mean, they are just evil. They are evil. They are brutal. And it's sad. And when I hear about these things, it's just, it incites every part of me to do whatever I can to spread awareness and talk about these things. I mean, not only that, I mean, there was the Chibok schoolgirl kidnapping. This happened in 2014. These things happened now, 2017. There was over 200 schoolgirls ages 14 to 18 years old that were terrorists, Islamist terrorists, essentially ripped them out of school. And again, forced them into marriages, forced them into slavery. Um, and not only that, I mean, I would go so far as to say that, even the burqa and wearing of the hijab and all of the harsh punishments, laws, and rules that women are subjugated to in Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, that this is, I mean, there's harsh punishments. These women are hung, they are beaten, they are lashed, and they are murdered if they do not wear these things. They are put in prison. Half of the female population in Iran has been imprisoned for this at one point in time or another. I mean, it is absolutely insane. So, yeah, it lights a fire. I get a fire burning, and we need to start normalizing talking about things that are not normal, you
Right.
know?
And just having the uncomfortable conversations. Yeah. Somebody just said in the comments, I find this interesting. Said interesting news on January 28th, Israeli troops who seized strategic ground in southern Syria after the fall of Bashar al-Assad will remain on the summit of Mount Hermon indefinitely. I'm not sure what they mean by that, but it seems like Israeli troops who seized strategic ground. I mean, there's a lot of action going on over there. I do think that with this transition of power that we're witnessing right now, with the Trump administration and Kash Patel and all that stuff, as insignificant as it may seem to some people, I think the reason there's so much pushback, like Kash Patel and RFK, like they're getting, they're the figureheads, they're the figureheads for what's going on behind the scenes and what the military is really doing. But I think that it's a global movement, what we're seeing occur, but I think, it's happening on U.S. soil. At least it's starting on U.S. soil, but it's been global all along. And I think that, a lot of these old players are being pushed out finally. And I'm bringing this up because I really do think, like everything you're talking about, I think we're finally going to see like evidence is going to start getting into the right hands for the right people to actually be able to go in and do something about it. And maybe it might take some time, but I think we're taking the right first step. Would you agree with that?
I would, yes. And I want to say I'm like really actually thankful for Donald Trump because I know he sees the dangers. I think he just delivered a speech over in the Middle East recently. I don't know if you caught that one. I think it was in Saudi Arabia, but it was just posted on X recently. I actually played it on my channel the other night because it was like, yeah, let's go. I mean, he's telling them there is no coexistence with terrorism. And the Middle Eastern leaders are going to have to take accountability for this terrorism. They are going to have to drive out the extremists. He said to drive them out of their countries, drive them off the earth. You know, he's saying America can't not fight this battle for you guys. We cannot do that. You guys will have to do this, and that's what he's been telling them. And it's so true, you know. And a lot of these, you could see a lot of the leaders were just sitting there squirming, smirking their faces, like, you know. And it's they know at the end of the day they can't condemn them because they know what's in their holy book at the end of the day. They know the holy book tells them to murder the Kafars and the infidels. They know this. You know, so it's a big problem in which I think we'll really be seeing progress when we actually see Islamic leaders stand up and speak to it. Because you know what's so funny? You don't ever see that. Name me one Islamic leader that has stood up and spoke to the terrorism and the extremists.
Well, they
None.
they're all in
Yeah.
bed together. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
But they don't want the extremists. They
right.
don't want them in their countries. You know, Saudi Arabia, Egypt doesn't want to take any of the Palestinians in. You know,
Well, I
they're
mean,
fighting Trump on that.
right, and this is generational mind control, monarch mind control, right? It's people have been manipulated to where it affects them at a genetic level. And, so their offspring, the new generations are being bred into this belief system. And it's at the end of the day, we really have to understand like it's just because of the inverted system and the inverted reality that these people like they don't even have a choice. When you're born into it and you're groomed into this belief system, into these positions in these families to
Yeah.
do these things. You don't know any other way. So we have to like, that's what we have to really do is start like shifting that paradigm. So people are being born into a world where that's not immediately pushed onto them. And that's why like you experienced what you did with your pregnancy, that there's studies, there's science behind fracturing the mind before the age of 3. And they start it while you're in the womb. So anything that you go through as a mother while you're pregnant, immediately affects the child in the womb. And then, the birthing process is very traumatic. They encourage C-sections for a reason because the womb is a Stargate. They cut the umbilical cord early because, they understand that that cuts you off from source when you're still receiving downloads and nutrients, essential nutrients to keep you healthy. And they replace those nutrients with an intense, insane immunization schedule. And ultimately, it's like, you're being traumatized right out of the gate. And what that's doing is creating alters at a very young age, alternate
Mhm.
personalities, and you don't even understand what's happening. And they are so it's not just the breeding programs, but these children are then being abducted into other programs. Like MI6 and CIA and secret space programs and all these intelligence agencies that are, this in the private sector that are using people for Manchurian candidates and all that stuff. So it just goes on and on and on, and we don't even know if it's happening. Like something Carrie Cassidy said one time recently that stood out to me. It was like made me pause. She's like, this is important because you don't even know if it's the same kid coming home from school. You don't even know if it's your kid coming home from school. That could have been taken and cloned and whatever, blah, blah, blah. And that's the reality of the situation. And we're just supposed to, turn our head to it because, oh, that's sci-fi. That doesn't exist. And I know it is woo. And it sounds crazy to talk about this stuff, but it's the reality of the situation, and I understand that it's important. And I do think right now a lot of these star seeds and these kids coming in are being protected on some higher level. I think they're coming in at a frequency that the dark can't even touch. Obviously, there's always going to be attempts, and that's why they try to weaken us and put chinks in our armor so they can get to us. They're relentless. They're relentless, but so are we. And we're going to keep. This is why we came to this planet. This is the exact time we came
We
here for.
we wouldn't be here if it was hopeless. This is the thing I always come back to. Yes, there's horrible things going on. Yes, it's rough. But why are we here then? Those of us that are awake there's a reason you're awake to this stuff. It's because you're at a certain level on a soul level. And you're here because you're part of the ground crew to help with the ascension and the awakening and anchor the energies and awaken just from you being here. Even if you didn't do anything outwardly, like in the way that we think, oh, you're doing things, your energy is always doing things. It's always affecting the planet and everyone around you at all times, 24/7. So, and this is what, Dolores Cannon talked about all the time. Just you being here, you're like a beacon for the higher energies to anchor
Yeah.
into the planet, and you're affecting everyone around you as well on a subconscious and energetic level. So there's that, and there is the ascension is happening, the awakening is happening. That doesn't mean it's smooth sailing. Those two things are not the same.
Yeah.
It's messy because all the shit, all the dark shit, nasty stuff's coming to the surface, and it's been there the whole time. It's just coming to the surface in a way that's never done before. And the dark is also flailing and freaking out because they know they have to lock stuff down now or it's game over, and they're like a cornered animal. So everything's getting really dark and really messy right now, uh, because we're seeing it and we're experiencing it like we've never done before. But we're here to help transmute that and to help bring more love and light to humanity and awaken consciousness, help with the awakening of consciousness. And once humanity reaches like a certain tipping point is when I think we'll really start to see more manifested light and change in that way on the planet. I think it's soon. I honestly think it's within our lifetimes, that we'll really start to see that new Earth really
Mhm.
manifest. But how do you
Yeah.
think? How do you see things playing out in the coming years, personally?
Well, yeah, I agree with everything that you just said. I feel like it's definitely super important for us to not only come together and build the New Earth timelines, build that New Earth prophecy. I think that's really what the grid work spiritual technology is all about, is um, us transforming everything from the inside out. We do have to get those black hearts to open up, though. I mean, because there really is a black heart virus,
Hmm.
and it is, it's pretty contagious. So we have to find a way to um, uh, teach people not to hate. We need to, and there
Yeah.
was something coming in with the children over there in the Middle East. There was some ideas proposed that, Israel and the U.S. should go in and rebuild the infrastructure of Palestine and essentially put them through like a training, like, try to like, I guess, what's it called when you're unlearning all of the hatred and all of the,
Yeah.
all of the, beliefs that are not good for the rest of humankind, basically. So yeah, I think something like that might be a good idea, but I don't know if that's going to happen or not. But I think in terms of the energy work, the spiritual work that we do, I think that coming together in meditation and ceremony, teaching this to the children is absolutely imperative. And on some level, I do feel like we need to safeguard this information. Some of the things that I was seeing, according to guardian consciousness, was that, there may come a time, in the next 50 years or whatever, like we do have to kind of take some of this in exile, just like some of the holy books were thrown in the mountains or in the caves or whatever over in, you know,
Yeah.
over there in Israel. It's like we may have to safeguard some of this information for the future children because there is a seventh root race that will come on the earth that will have gold blood, RH null blood. Essentially, they will be electrically conductive with the planet and it changes and shifts, and that, those new races will have to inherit spiritual wisdom and knowledge because it'll be imperative for their survival. Same with the children that we have now. I mean, these are crystal children, these are rainbow children, these are children that need spiritual knowledge. I mean, and this is why we see why we lose so many to fentanyl, why we lose so many to, all of the crazy stuff that um the transgender stuff, the confusion, da 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 da. Those are inverted chakra system. Get these children some spiritual healing. Teach them about their biospiritual mechanics.
Mhm.
They probably won't have these problems.
They wouldn't have those problems. It's yeah, it's it's the propaganda, it's the mind control. I mean, they're being programmed to believe that stuff if they were, doing everything you just said, it would be completely different. Like understanding the spiritual genetic makeup and the chakra system and all that stuff, I think it would go a long way in changing, that's where it starts with the kids.
Definitely. And they need to be able to tap into those stargates to heal their etheric bodies and their light bodies as well. And I mean, we got to make it to the golden city. You say, how, what do we see coming in the future? Yeah, th a third millennia, fourth millennia. I think this is where we'll actually see, the coming of the golden light cities and the star civilizations. I mean, this is where I think these things will really start to manifest as we kind of shift into maybe where 60 Earth actually becomes more accessible, because I think that's where New Earth ultimately begins. I think right now, though, that 3D and 4D Earth, especially 4D Earth, is on a quarantine, or at least that's the messages that I've been getting, is that they've placed safeguards there. They're not letting reptilians and diabolical ones, the Draco High of the corrupted Atlantean priests, they're not letting them access 5D and 6D Earth. They're quarantined in the 4D. So all of this chaos is happening in the lower astral of the planet.
Hmm. Yeah, that's
And
in. Oh, go ahead.
no, it's okay. Go ahead.
No, that's very interesting. That as far as I think that there are crystal cities and floating cities and all the stuff that we've seen in sci-fi. I think that's all there already. And if you can, I think what we see are ruins and remains of a once utopian civilization that existed on this planet. A lot of even mountain ranges, I don't think they're even, some of them aren't even organic mountains. I think they're the base or the foundation of something much larger that probably still exists in these other dimensions. And, that's why we go and do this grid work and reconnect those threads, right? And somebody asked earlier, like, what can we do to help reopen these stargates that are being closed off? And grid work, yeah, you can say grid work, but would you have anything specifically, any advice that to give that person?
Well, I mean, you can do grid work on your own. You can literally go to the stargates and you can run clearings, verbal clearings, emotional clearings, ceremony, rituals. You can create crystal grids. I mean, you can call in shields and help support and help protect, the Stargate. You can also join community and like-minded people that are doing those things or hosting those things. That's something that I do. I host ceremonial events and we notice massive impact and shifts after doing, we call them rescue guardian missions. We have 25 people in a circle, you know, collapsing down the evil, extracting the evil, cleansing it, restoring it, rehabilitating it, dissolving, you know, um, anchoring in the organic resources, energetically speaking, clearing the inner passageways, connecting the water and the river systems back in, on a spiritual level, right? Dealing with the within the ethereal levels of things and the energetic levels of things, because it is a relationship with the spirit of the earth, and the spirit of the earth needs us to listen to her spirit messages, and she also needs assistance sometimes. I mean, this goes back to the Ioni tribes and the 12D soul blueprint holders. I mean, that's what they did every day all day, was they were in communion with the inner earth chakras and the inner earth vortices and going all the way to the core. They were a part of the cleansing system and the mutual healing system with the planet. You see that with the ancient heroes. What do those people do all day? They walk the mountaintops and they're just like praying all day long, calling in the condor, and that's important. We have people that are doing that. Those are the true guardians of the earth.
Yeah. Have this reminds me, have you seen the show The Gift on it's a show called The Gift and it's like a Turkish show on Netflix. Um
I haven't seen it.
okay, so I'm gonna spoiler alert. It's 3 seasons long and each season takes place in a different dimension on a different timeline. And what happens is Earth got to this point where the women could no longer have children. They can get pregnant, but they would have a miscarriage, and nobody understood why. But it would had to do with like this AI takeover essentially that infiltrated the collective consciousness and down to like a parasitical level, and it made an entire population sterile. So this girl, the main character, was a gifted channel, and she was led to Göbekli Tepe and all these ancient sites. But Göbekli Tepe, in the show, there was a portal, a Stargate there, and she was led to it. The archaeologist didn't know about it because they, it was behind a wall that they didn't know, but she was channeled or guided there. Anyway, she went through this portal, right? And it took her to another dimension, another timeline where she knew all the same people were in her life, but they played different roles. Maybe her boyfriend was her dad or whatever. They were the same energies. And what she had to do, the whole premise of the series was she had to go through these portals of these ancient sites and make corrections on these other timelines to get us back into the organic timeline where we could procreate again. And it's an amazing show with one of the most beautiful messages I've ever seen. And it's like, oh, this is not a Hollywood script or a
Yeah.
CIA script. You understand, like, if you understand everything we're talking about, that show is major disclosure. And I think like it's a physical representation of what we can do energetically.
Yeah. That's exactly what grid work is.
Right.
I mean, that it's you're going in, you're correcting timelines, healing timelines, channeling, remote viewing, your psychic intuition, what you're seeing. I mean, trusting that and being compassionate, grieving for these things, even sometimes just to move souls, rescue souls, crossover souls. All that's needed is a little bit of acknowledgement and compassion for whatever that being went through on that land. And we
Right.
have a lot of war-torn land, especially here in the US, the Trail of Tears, the Civil War, where the sh first shots were fired down in South Carolina. I mean, and this is the elementals go to the blood-stained land. I mean, the elementals are there working on things, trying to heal those bloody areas of pain, basically, and um, nurture all of that within the land. And unfortunately, again, yeah, some of these areas, the frequency fences, I mean, it's killing out the nature spirits. I mean, where I am, I can't really hear nature spirits that much. But if I was to go, let's say, to Machu Picchu, I mean, I'm hearing like everything's speaking in the wind, the trees are speaking. I just hear Mother Earth talking, 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 chatter, chatter, chatter. And it's like, that's how
And you
that
feel
your
it.
area is struggling. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm here in St. Louis and I'm getting ready to move actually to Florida, down towards the Sarasota area because I'm just being led there. And but here, I've done my mission here. I understand that my time here is done. The next chapter is somewhere else. But I think St. Louis is under this frequency net. It's a very dense energy, and even normies, they have like this ongoing joke, like there's chains here to hold you down. It's like the St. Louis trap, or it's like a quicksand pit.
Mm,
Once you're here, nobody wants to leave, and it is that way. It's like a program that exists. If I travel and I'll feel free, my body will start to feel healed. I experience amazing things. I can tap into the energies. And as soon as I enter the frequencies back here, there's like this net over this area. And it's intentional, I understand, but it's like it's so potent and it's become so um palpable and tangible and you understand it and see it for what it is once you leave and come back. And
yeah.
and it's also in America, the food and the air. Like if you go spend time in some of these sacred places, you start healing and you come back and you become inflamed and sick and you gain weight. I mean, there is really something to what you're saying with these frequency nets. And I think it affects our health directly. And that it's a perfect recipe. Unfortunately, these people are evil geniuses and they know exactly what they're doing. The term evil genius comes from somewhere because the geniuses are unfortunately hijacked and they're the ones who are brought into these programs and blackmailed and they're used for nefarious purposes. How do you think they built the Death Star? I mean, that's exactly that story in Star Wars and Rogue One.
Yeah.
They kidnapped a genius and they force him. They kidnap his family too, and they force him to build the Death Star against his will.
Despicable. It's just, yeah. Well, I mean, I don't worry so much because I do know like we are going to come into the new Earth timeline. It's just a matter of everything shifting and us working through these things. It feels very intense right now, but again, I think it's because a lot of the land's not being supported. Do you mind if I show you like a little bit on my slides? I mean, they are a little like They're not like diagrams, they're just pictures to try to give people maybe like an essence of what the different Earths would look like or feel like if we shifted up to the 12.
Yeah, bring it on.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Okay.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Um,
I just gave you permission to share, so you should be able to.
okay, thanks. So I like this picture because I feel like this really kind of does define the timeline jumping that we're doing and how, all these different dimensional Earths, I mean, they are all simultaneously existing according to vibration, energy, and frequency. But I think they do also separate too, and with that is when we see like bifurcations of timelines and we feel polarity and we feel like we definitely disengage, like we're ricocheted out of somebody's reality, or, a timeline collapses and we have like those major, things that happen where you feel like I don't even recognize this person anymore, because you might have quantum jumped like pretty far away type of thing.
Yep.
Um, so this is just a picture of, well, this is kind of representing timeline grid models. So how New Earth will be built is by timeline grid models that happen and occur through the galactic light matrices. I've named a couple of them, like the Dove light matrice, the Swan light matrice, and it's where she's upgraded in these ultra fabrics and templates that um, interdimensionally hold the holographic electromagnetic networks together. Essentially, I have better diagrams for this one. I think just to give you an example of that, these are the force breeder implants, but it would be something kind of like this. Like this is kind of a Curry model, and we have multiple different of those geometrics running on the planet. I've kind of designed and channeled some of my own as well. I call this one the Lemurian light grid fabric, and it's the geometry, to access Lemuria through the X's of the inner Earth vortice systems, and then it's kind of represented by a feminine Stargate hourglass geometric. And it really rides on the angular ley line timelines and the currents of this pre-pole tilt shift, because I think that's how we really access Lemuria. I think it's on the previous pole tilt. But the dove light, I think, is this one. And this is kind of just representing the current of the energy of how the dove light would manifest. The wings of the dove are representing peace, liberation, and freedom codes. And it's running the cosmic Christos energy. It has the blue wave spectrum and the emerald wave light spectrum that runs within it. But then there's more. I did this one. This is the Swan light grid fabric. I think these build up, these stack up, and
The-
these inner matrices create the new Earth structures.
yeah, these are very activating, by the way. I'm like getting chills looking at these. I feel like that like
Yeah.
you're representing something that obviously we've forgotten, but this is like bringing it like it's helping like those memories resurface. So I understand, like you said, you channeled some of this, but you're definitely onto something because I can feel it.
I use these in my gridwork sessions because I do a lot of remote facilitation, and we'll just even, do just exactly that. Stare at them, kind of bring the codes in, activate the codes. The codes, run through the body, and then, yeah, it activates the timelines. You start getting the psychic downloads. This one I call the Tiamat grid, so I think this one goes back, to the original Tiamat body. Five-dimensional inner Earth body, but I think this transmits to 8D Earth essentially. But this one, through this, it's really like the natural flower of life geometry is connected to this honeycomb hexagonal patterning inside of the Earth. So very much like the bees and things like this, like bringing in this like feminine energy, and it's connected to the heart pulse from the point of all union that creates life on the Earth. And this ties into the mother grid fabric. Don't know if I have a picture of the mother grid. I think I do. It's just an example, but showing how it's the fabric of all life, um, essentially on the planet. But yeah, so there's multiple of these ethereal, templating.
So go back to the one where the I don't know, you just I don't know how to describe it. Which one? Nope, keep going. Well, any one of them. So these grids right here, we have to understand that this is the system that's been hijacked, right? And the overt satanic overlords, whatever you want to call them, they understand this. And it has very much been hijacked and inverted. And that's why we have to go to these points just as a visual representation for the people watching. That's why it's important to go to these points and like invert that back, right? And reconnect those energetic threads, like I said. And Max Spears described it. There was the one where you showed it was like the red picture with the earth with all the grid around it, all the lines, or the net around it, the matrices.
Oh, let me see.
Yeah, that one.
Hmm.
So the way Max Spears described it is, okay, that's like you're saying that's a universal energetic grid. Well, what they do is they don't just invert it, but they create their own negative version of it. So there's a negative frequency in that looks exactly like that too, that they want everybody to get caught into, like trapped in, like a spider web, right? And basically you can imagine each one of those threads is like a belief system. And what the belief systems do is ultimately keep a lid on your spiritual ascension, on your, on your awakening. Because he said the way he described it is, it doesn't matter which one you believe in, as long as you believe in one of them, in one of their forced beliefs. The beliefs that we're spoon-fed and we're told to believe. As long as you believe in one of them, you're operating in that inverted matrix, right? And then now you're trapped in that inverted reality. So it's they get their ideas from the organic universal energetic grid that already exists. And so they're it's just like what AI does. AI's primary focus, its primary goal is to become human. Why? Because humans hold all the power. We hold all the power. It doesn't matter what they think they can accomplish, they can never be us. Right? So there, yeah, it might seem like a threat, but if we remember who we are and tap into our true potential and reactivate all this stuff, it's game over for that AI frequency and that negative agenda, right? So I think it's important to remember like there's a dark and light of exactly what you're representing here.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think Ashiana Dean coins them the Atlantean pylon implant networks and systems, and there's like, she calls them the like the four faces of man, the golden Aquilin grid, the dragon grid, like they're like all basically like fallen overlays, over the system.
Right.
Yeah, and again, siphoning off of the Stargates essentially. But if you do upgrade your light body field with these positive light matrices and you hold those codes within you, you can essentially your body is the tuner, the transmitter, the receiver. So even going to the Stargates and you carry those codes, I mean, you can activate that in the Stargate. You can heal it just with your own body and vice versa. So it's pretty cool, right? Like,
Hmm.
Yeah.
uh, okay, let's see. We'll go back to here because I was just gonna say this was the picture I had for the 1D Earth. So this one I think is kind of so 1D Earth is kind of an excruciating place. I think 1D Earth is painful. I always like would say like after I go through a major reversal Stargate correction, like when I did DC or I did Rome, the Vatican, like I hit the core of 1D Earth, and it just takes you all the way into the densest levels of the planet. They do hold the purgatory fields in the hell realms, and essentially, there are places on the Earth you can physically have a physical, real experience of a 1D Earth, such as the Gaza Strip, such as, Skid Row in Los Angeles, California. Um, such as places like ancient Sumerian lands in Iraq and Babylon by the Persian Gulf, things like this. So, I mean, 1D Earth is a physical experience in some timeline fields on the Earth, but there's definitely a lot of black AI dragon, black goo, all that stuff's kind of running through 1D Earth. I also think it's very connected to the Saturn passageways, and all of the mental fields of like Nibiru, Orion, Draco, Anunnaki, Maldek, Marduk, all those templates are kind of held here.
Yeah.
Um,
So, okay, maybe you have an opinion on this, but in 1D Earth or 2D Earth, would you think that this is where we would see a flat plane, like a flat Earth? Because my theory is that the whole reason they promote flat Earth is because it's a 2D Earth and it counters the ascension, right? If they can get people believing in the flat Earth, it's like a devolution instead of an evolution, instead of an ascension. Because just by nature, it that in a video game, the 2D the 2D circle becomes a 3D sphere just by the evolution of the physics of the gaming system, right? So in reality, it would be the same way too. So as we ascend in these dimensional Earths, the Earth becomes naturally a sphere, and in the lower realms, it might be a flat plane. Would you agree with that, or do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm not sure, but it sounds like it's all things are possible. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you never know. Like, it could be a flat disk down on 1D Earth, just like a core flat disk. Yeah, it could be. I mean, well, one thing that I see is I see like the hologram of Saturn's living life force energy in there. I see the black Saturnian tesseract cube, like from the movie Interstellar. Like I see the spike matrix coming up and plugging into all of those negative AI overlays in the planet. Um, and so yeah, I really think it's like the hell realms, honestly.
Right.
It's where everything just hurts, really.
Hmm.
Um, So I put Machu Picchu for 2D Earth because I feel like, it's the planetary sacral chakra, emotional timelines, depth of the collective karmic field. Uh, do you want me to explain each one or just kind of flip through the pictures?
I mean, it's entirely up to you. Aaron, did you have any thoughts on this? You kind of came in for a minute and dropped that gold nugget on us, and then you disappeared. So,
Uh, I mean, there's a million things I could,
well, you were just at Machu
directions I could go
Picchu.
with this.
Weren't you
What's
just
that?
at Machu Picchu?
Yeah, so I wanted to say that earlier, but it just kind of kept going. I was just there in October, me and my wife. We, we went on a Peru trip with some awesome people. Nikki Anna Jones, who's going to be speaking at our conference coming up, she was one of the leaders on the trip. And yeah, we went to Machu Picchu, we went to Sacsayhuaman, um, Ollantaytambo, and a bunch of other places, and they were all very, you could feel the energy in these, like you were saying, you could feel it, you can sense they're very high vibrational places for sure, and very magical. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's definitely holds the emotional, the sexual collective fields. I went to Machu Picchu as well, and it was like a very like a lot of sensual energy, passionate
Mhm.
energy. There's a strong elemental connection, I think, on 2D Earth. I do think it connects into the Venusian portals on the planet, which the Venusian portals, I think, are very significant for the development for New Earth because I almost see Venus kind of in the future. It's like Venus and Earth were once one cell and they like split apart, and somehow Venus is like more in the future. They're more crystallized, they're more already kind of in a crystal state, crystal cities and things like this.
So, have you identified? Okay, you're talking about the Saturn portals and the Venus portals. Like, have you identified the locations of the portals and where they go? Like where? How do you know where a Saturn portal is and a Venus portal? Or do you?
Well, there's like seven main locations on the planet for Venusian portals. I believe Kauai, Hawaii is one of them. In the Hindu monastery, there's actually a Venus temple that was underneath that monastery before that monastery was put there. So it is a known Venusian portal. I think there's one in Turkey. Um, there's like there's a few of them. Yeah.
Right.
Um,
Well, I think that Venus plays a much bigger role in all this, and it has for a while. I think that all the action is on Venus, and I think they have us looking at Mars for a reason. I think they want us all focused on Mars, going to Mars. Mars is always the narrative, but I think the real action is on Venus. I think there's something very significant about that. You know, the Val Thor and all these people, these Venusians over time who have come here to try and assist us, but they play a major role. But yet the narrative is always, let's get to Mars, let's get to Mars, you know? And I think that's like either a sleight of hand or something. I don't know, but what do you think?
I agree with you. I think Venus is the future and Mars is the past.
Interesting.
Yeah. And like all of my visions, when I get visions of New Earth and what that's gonna be like, it's always connected to Venus opening up those psychic passageways and working with the feminine on the earth, supporting the feminine enlightenment, the feminine Christic consciousness on the planet. Supporting all of the mother arcing Stargate portals on the Earth, places like Bali, Uluru, um, Mount Shasta, you know, Sarasota, Florida. It's going to probably plug into there as well. Um, but I think there's a lot of harvesting on 2D Earth because it's also where we're processing all of the karma. It's a karmic dimension in terms of relationships or unresolved healing or emotional wounds. So there is duality, to each Earth, essentially, going all the way up to the 12D, and it's mostly felt on 1D, 2D, and 3D. So if you consciously access to the earth, it's a great place to try to reclaim your sovereignty in terms of um, energy and kind of breaking free from karmic cycles. Um,
Yeah. It's interesting. So duality you believe exists all the way up until the top. And
I do,
okay.
yeah. 3D Earth, as we know, it's a crazy place. Um, the battlefield of physical and spiritual warfare. It's where it manifests in its most tangible form. It does require a lot of spiritual resilience and preparedness because it is the battlefield.
Right.
A lot of people come to me and they're like, you know, of course I'm loving and I'm not non-judgmental and I'm a healer. I'm there to help people and meet them wherever they are. But I tell people like you got to gear up on this dimension. You wouldn't go on a battlefield without, having like your inner shield and your inner sword and like, because it's bombarded with all kinds of things, that you have to withstand. And it's a lot of trifurcation in this dimension, which means there's a lot of not being able to see that third dimension, which is usually an antagonistic energy or an enemy patterning type of energy or something you just couldn't see. You know, um, I think there's just a lot of mechanics for control here. As you know, the 3D Earth is, like you said, all of the frequency fences, all of the negative overlays, lots of implants. There's like literally planetary J seals and wormhole systems, plus Draco seals. I mean, those are death funnels, so they're spiraling them through the third D. But it is definitely a middle ground, and we do struggle with polarity and duality here.
It's a battlefield for sure.
4D Earth, this is where the lower astral, this is where I say they've shown me that they've set the quarantine measures here and have placed crystal seals in this realm. So that way, prevents any bleeding from the lower dimensional Earth timelines to essentially going into the higher Earth timelines. It's a protective field. I think they placed those seals in the firmament, encapsulating the 4D. It could be the ice wall, it could be the hypershield dome. It's all a part of the uh, quarantine system, essentially. But it definitely ties into, everything that's going on, I think, in the chaos fields, essentially. I think, from 1 to 4D Earth, there's a lot going on here. But
Right.
I think if you access 4D, you can access 10D Earth, and you can access 12D Earth from 4D Earth as well. Like there are portals that you can go through and get to the higher timelines.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah, I feel this. I feel this image. It very much resonates with me.
I know, right? Me too. When I seen it, I was like, well, it's the most protected, on an angelic level. The angelic realms, they come to protect Garden and, they work in this realm a lot. It's where really,
Hmm.
everything is kind of happening in terms of all spiritual warfare, all spiritual battles.
Right.
5D Earth, let me see. What do I have for 5D Earth? It's where we start to access the higher timelines and miss the battle for Ascension, but I think I do like to try to bust that 3D, 5D Earth consciousness on 3D you're in duality and 5D, nothing's going on. You're just full ascension. I don't think that's correct. I think that there's still a lot of spiritual growth in this realm. I think it's where you're actually just starting to break free from 4D chaos, spiritual warfare realms. Um,
Yeah.
but I think there is less infiltration by negative forces here. Um,
Well, th so that's interesting about 5D. So, would you say it's fifth dimension or fifth density, or is it the same thing to you?
I guess it would be all relative, I guess. Yeah.
Well, the reason I say that is because Daryl James, who's one of our, he's a SSP whistleblower, but when he was brought into the programs, he volunteered. He went into the Navy and they stationed at Cornwall, England, and literally signed a stack of papers for the 20 and back program, and they had to put him in a density chamber to even enter the programs because they said that all of the ETs and basically the entire secret space program as we know it exists in the fifth density, meaning we wouldn't perceive them in 3D down here on Earth. So they had to, anybody that accesses or participates in the programs, they have to artificially push them from 3D to 5D in order to perceive what's happening in fifth density, which means it's not at all the ascent like it's still the battlefield there as well. And he said that the reason they even have a density chamber in the first place is because reptilians invented it because they can't naturally access 5D. So they had to build an artificial density chamber. It's a huge chair for them, but they put humans in it too. But they had to build the density chamber for them to access 5D to participate in this space program, right? So if that all exists in 5D, and that's all part of the galactic slave trade, and that's is still occurring there in fifth density, according to what Daryl said. That would mean that it's like, yeah, it's a higher frequency where he said you are very much more of a collective and time is more of an illusion, but it's still
Mhm.
duality like all the way. Like people are still not just magically healed because they're in the fifth density. It's a much lighter frequency and things move faster because it's a higher frequency, but it's not like there's still work to be done in that realm as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I agree with that. And I don't know if you've read the Law of One at all or are familiar with it, but that lines up exactly with what the Law of One says about densities. It says fifth density is, I can't remember how many, I think it's 100 or some, I think it said 100 times more harmonious than third density. So it's a higher frequency, Tyler, like you just said. So it's almost like you are naturally a little bit more connected to everything and to God, you could say, to the divine. You're naturally more telepathic. You're naturally more, you can manifest quicker and easier. All these things, right? Your abilities are easier. So it's less dense, but there's still duality. There's still free will in that duality, you know. And I don't know, maybe it makes it harder to be quote unquote negative or evil, which is just, in my opinion, all evil is just an, you could say it's an absence of love. It's an unconsciousness of love, and love is the ultimate reality, and all God, everything is love, energy. It's all the same thing. But so the more you get a higher frequency, the more you're naturally connected, and it's just easier to have a consciousness that connects with that, I guess is a way to say it.
Right.
But there's still duality. There's still things that are not love there, and there's still unconsciousness to a degree there, and so I think at a certain level, and I think the Law of Ones talks about this as well. At a certain density, they're like evil or any of that stuff cannot, duality cannot exist because it just can't at a certain level. So like the negative path, the service to self path, basically you can like go up to a certain density or a certain level, and then you either have to go positive because you just have to, or you have to be like recycled essentially.
Yeah. Which honestly, you have what you have written here, higher timelines amidst the battle for ascension is kind of perfectly encapsulates that.
Yeah.
And I think you made a really good significant point too, Tyler, with saying that the reptilian ones can't really get to the 5D. That was kind of what I got too, was that um, even like white Dracos, I don't think they really can truly fully penetrate or access 5D, that they more so covet it. They can see it, they want it. And this is why they feed on those that have, five strands of their DNA activated. Um, I think Pleiadians a lot of times incarnate into 5D Earth.
Hmm.
And a lot of times Pleiadians are directly the ones that Dracos usually want to consume. They're a lot of times victimized by the draconian reptilians and the white Dracos. So, yeah, they covet this energy, but they cannot fully attain that. And that's something that is, I think, frustrating probably for them.
For them, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is yeah, all very fascinating, and these are great slides. This is
I'm glad you like it. That
yeah,
makes me so happy. Well, so we go 60 Earth, higher astral Earth, gateway to new Earth. I think this is where it really kind of starts to transform. Um, and begin really truly towards the higher path of ascension is once you kind of get through 5D. Um, this one's really connected to all the guardian stargates all over the planet. I channeled that it's really connected to the Sirian solar system. When I was in that presence of the 60 reality, I could tune into three different suns, astrologically speaking. Like I could see three different solar bodies. Um, and that was you know, I
yeah.
seen that coming through the Mediterranean portals, the Pacific Ocean, the Polynesian Triangle, Easter Islands. It's really connected to those magnetic anomalies that are following almost like a bigger timeline model or grid on the planet. Like we had those intricate ones with smaller geometries. It's almost like it expands into a much bigger one.
And that makes sense to me as far as like seeing different planetary bodies or more suns, because we see the videos where sometimes people are filming two suns at once, or maybe even three at a time. I don't know, but and they're like, oh look, they're lying to us because they've been hiding this the whole time. I'm like, are they? Or is it just you're at a point in time where you're witnessing or experiencing the merging of two realities and you're able to perceive it? You're able to perceive two suns at once. And it's not necessarily that the government's been hiding it. It's just that they can't stop what's coming, right? They can't
Mhm.
stop the inevitable merging of these dimensions and these higher realms. So I think at certain points in time, maybe if the conditions are just right, we can perceive two suns. And maybe that's what you're talking about, unless I'm mistaken.
Yeah, I think you you opened up to like a almost like a heavenly realm experience, like in the sky. Like you see more rainbow prisms, you see those they're called like dog prisms and stuff. You can see more of the organic time dimensional portals. More geometry opens up. I could access more of the angelic realm, more of the universal tree of life. It's definitely very connected to like the sacred mother trees, the forest, and the grandmother trees. And really, this is where we start to integrate things from uh, future new Earth. So, like the coming of the golden light seas, the coming of the golden forests, and the coming of the gold blood ones. Um, like this kind of comes through at 60 where we're going to see this, massive transformation of the DNA.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, let's kind
okay.
of fly through these last couple slides and start to wrap this up. And
Well, I'll just skip maybe to, should I skip to 12D?
sure, yeah, go for
Sure.
it.
Okay. 12D Ascended Earth. So really, you get through all the higher ones and it's a process of, creating the ultimate embodiment of New Earth where heaven on Earth becomes a tangible reality, and future Earth is fully protected under the guidance of guardian hierarchies. And it is really holding the highest morality consciousness. It's embodying peace, harmony, dissolution of all galactic conflicts. All the wounds of galactic wars are healed, and it's really the level of enlightenment free from any lower vibrational emotions like hatred, anger, wrath, cruelty. None of that really exists on New Earth. It's not allowed to come to New Earth, really.
Right.
It will be the birthplace of the future star civilizations. And
That's interesting, those bubbles there, like those domes that are represented here. I mean, I know that might just be part of the graphic, but I feel like there's something to that Um, I feel like that once existed here on Earth before the last cataclysm.
Yeah.
Something along those lines. Like I imagine like some of these sacred sites like Shiprock or Devil's Tower, they might have been like the central hub for some sort of a dome that was a sphere or something that was protecting that area. And obviously that was all dismantled, but I don't know. It's just kind of a download I'm getting from looking at that.
I think you're right. Yeah, I mean, I think Atlantis was once this. Once we get on 12D Earth, all the architecture will become star civilization architecture. So you see how everything's round, and you know how Atlantis was round, and it had all of, I mean, and there's water in between it, and it's kind of built into nature itself. I mean, that's kind of how New Earth will look like in the future, is will be very cohesive and very organic, and things will be energetically encoded to celestial consciousness.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
So,
interesting. I had a dream one time, or it happened during a meditation, that I was on Atlantis. And you know how the ringed city that we see, on each ring, so the rings actually represented the solar system, and each ring was its own, was a planet, right, in the orbit. And on each ring on here on Earth, there was a portal to that planet in my experience. So I thought, oh, that's interesting. So like each ring represents the orbit of a different planet, and each one can access that planet as like a gateway or Stargate, which obviously that was just a dream. It might not even been real, but I find it interesting to start viewing it as that. I wonder if there was something to that.
yeah, I'll go ahead and stop my screen share, but I would definitely explore that through like a meditation, like revisit that and see if you can access those portals and see where they take you. That would be try to channel that information.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all this. It was absolutely
Yes.
fascinating. You're a wealth of information. And can you please let our audience know how they can follow you? I put your links and everything in the description, but let them know, what you're up to and where they can follow you.
Sure. Thank you. You can find me at IndigoAngel, all one word, on YouTube, and my website is IndigoAngel222.com. I'm currently actually enrolling for a global gridwork and a new Earth prophecy course. So if you liked what you just seen, like you'll get the full thing in my course that we're going to be starting on the 222 codes February 22nd, 2025. And the registration or the landing page to look at it is at learn.indigoangel222.com.
Amazing. Yeah. I mean, there's probably, I would say it's a very valuable course right now, especially for the people who are guided. I mean, they wouldn't be guided to it unless, unless they're at this level anyway. So, yeah, that's incredible. Thank you for doing the work that you're doing. And Aaron, did you have any last words before we start to wrap this up?
No, this was amazing. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. This was really fun, and I enjoyed connecting with you and everyone watching.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
I want to remind everybody, if you missed the beginning, I talked about Mary Beaver's conference that's coming up it's a one-day event, February 23rd in Folsom, California, right in Sacramento, California, essentially. Tickets are only $50. If you're in the area, come hang out. Live stream passes are only $25. That link is below in the description. And if you feel compelled to come join us in Grafton, Illinois this May, tickets are only, I don't even remember what the tickets are, $388, 4 days. And it's 13 speakers this year, and it's our last year in Grafton. All that information is at journeytotruth.online. We have a brilliant lineup. We cannot wait for it this year. It's going to be a lot of fun. So we would love to see you there. So if you're guided at all, come hang out with us. It'll be fun. And thanks again, Indy, for joining us. And we'll have to do this again because I can tell you have a lot more up your sleeve that we can get into. So it'll be a lot of fun, I think. And there's no shortage of things to talk about as we move forward. So,
Sounds good. I'd love that. Thank you.
yep. Okay. Good night, everybody. We love you. And until next time, have a great evening.